Dr. Kira Thorne pressed her face against the observation window of the Altera 3 research station. The view should have been peaceful, rolling purple hills under 3 moons. With the research domes scattered like silver bubbles across the landscape, instead, she watched black shapes moving through the air like living smoke. They poured from the sky in endless streams, covering the ground like a dark tide. The alarms had been screaming for 20 minutes. The station shook again as something massive struck the outer hull. Through the corridors, she could hear the wet sounds of tearing metal and the high-pitched screams of her colleagues. The Trilaxian scientists had been the first to die. Their energy shields, pride of their advanced civilization, had lasted exactly 12 seconds against whatever was attacking them. Kira ran through the central corridor, her boots slipping on. Something sticky and dark that she didn't want to identify. The emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows. Behind her, she could hear the scraping sound of claws on metal getting closer. The station's defensive turrets had gone silent 15 minutes ago. The force fields that were supposed to protect them had flickered and died like broken light bulbs. She reached the communication center and found Dr. Nex hunched over the main console. The tall, blue-skinned Alterian was bleeding from multiple wounds, his forearms working frantically at the controls. His species was known throughout the galaxy for their calm logic, but his eyes showed pure terror. The quantum barriers failed. He gasped without looking up. Our weapons cannot penetrate their bioarmor. They adapt to every frequency we use. This is impossible according to all known physics. Through the reinforced walls, Kira could hear the sound of metal being ripped apart like paper. The station's hull was supposed to withstand asteroid impacts. Whatever was out there was treating it like soft clay. How many survivors? She asked. Checking the readings on her portable scanner? Unknown. Internal sensors are failing. These creatures emit some kind of interference field. Nex's voice was getting weaker. Dr. Kira, you must understand. We've never encountered anything like this. Our databases contain records of every known hostile species in the galaxy. This is something new, something that should not exist. A sound like thunder rolled through the station. The lights went out completely, then came back on dim and flickering. Through the communication array's external cameras, Kira could see the creatures more clearly now. They looked like enormous insects crossed with machines, but they moved with fluid grace. Their bodies seemed to shift and change, growing new limbs and weapons as needed. Some were as small as ground vehicles, others as large as buildings. They're not just attacking randomly, she realized, studying the tactical display. Look at the pattern. They're targeting specific systems in order. First the weapons, then the shields, then the power grid. They know exactly how our technology works. Nex managed to raise his head. That is what terrifies me most. They are learning as they attack. Every defense we activate, they counter within minutes. It is as if they have been studying galactic technology for centuries. The station shuddered again. This time the sound was different, closer. Something had breached the main hull. Send the distress signal, Kira ordered. All frequencies. Maximum power? To whom? The nearest Confederation patrol is 6 days away. We will be dead in 6 hours. But Nex's hands were already moving over the controls, his training overriding his despair. Send it anyway. Someone might be listening. The communication array came online with a burst of static. Nex began transmitting on every frequency the station could access. The message was simple and desperate. Altara 3, research station under attack by unknown hostiles. All defensive systems have failed. Massive casualties. Species unknown, extremely hostile, adapting to all countermeasures. Requesting immediate assistance. Coordinates attached. This is Dr. Nex of the Galactic Confederation Scientific Division. If anyone receives this message, warn the core systems. These creatures are unlike anything in our databases. The transmission, cut off as something large struck the communication tower. Through the cameras, they could see one of the creatures climbing the structure. It was the size of a shuttle, with too many legs and eyes that glowed like stars. As they watched, it began to dissolve the metal with some kind of acid, studying the remains as if learning how it was made. "Signal sent," Nex reported. "Ow. I doubt it will reach anyone in time to matter." Door to the communication center began to bulge inward. Whatever was on the other side was strong enough to bend reinforced steel. Kira grabbed Nex's arm and pulled him toward the emergency. "Exit. The lower levels," she said. "The research labs have independent power systems. You might be able to hide there until help arrives." "You were optimistic for a human," Nex said, but he followed her through the narrow maintenance tunnel. "Your species' tendency toward hope in hopeless situations is well documented." They crawled through the service passages as the station died around them. Through the thin walls, they could hear the sounds of destruction. Metal tearing, systems failing, and worst of all, the absolute silence that followed as each section of the station was consumed. The creatures didn't just destroy, they absorbed, processed, learned from everything they encountered. In the lower labs, they found 3 other survivors. A young Voltan engineer named Pip, Dr. Rand, the human archaeologist, and a maintenance worker whose species Kira didn't recognize. They huddled in the sealed research vault, surrounded by computers and specimen containers, while the sounds of destruction continued above. "What are they?" Pip whispered. The engineer's natural purple color had faded to pale gray with fear. "Unknown," Dr. Rand replied grimly. He was an older human, his hair white from years of fieldwork. "But I've seen something like this before. Ancient ruins on the rim worlds, civilizations that just ... stopped. No signs of war, no evidence of disease or disaster, no, just empty cities and dead worlds." Through the vault's small window, they could see movement in the corridor outside. The creatures had reached the lower levels. They moved with purpose, checking each room systematically. Some carried what looked like scanning devices. Others seemed to be mapping the station's layout. "They're not just destroying," Kira realized. "They're studying us, learning everything about our technology, our biology, our culture. This isn't a random attack. It's intelligence gathering." The vault's systems flickered as something interfered with the power grid. On the security monitors, they could see the creatures had found the station's central database. Instead of destroying it, they were interfacing with it directly there. Organic technology, merging with the quantum computers. "They're downloading everything," Dr. Rand said quietly. "Every piece of information about the Confederation, our defenses, our colonies." This was never about destroying one research station. This is reconnaissance for something much larger. Outside, the sounds of destruction began to fade, but that only made it worse. The silence meant the creatures had finished their work. Soon, they would begin their systematic search of the remaining sections. The survivors had perhaps an hour before they were found. Kira looked at the communication panel. The distress signal was still transmitting, but the range was dropping as the station's power failed. Soon, the message would fade to nothing, lost in the vast darkness of space. She could only hope that somewhere out there someone had heard their call for help. But deep down, she knew the truth that Dr. Nex had been too polite to say out loud. No one was coming. The galaxy's peaceful civilizations had no experience with enemies like this. By the time any help arrived, there would be nothing left but empty metal and the creature's hunger for more worlds to consume. Captain Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the HMS Retribution, studying the star charts with tired eyes. His heavy cruiser was 3 days into a routine patrol of the Outer Rim. Far from the comfortable trade routes and established colonies that most spacers preferred, out here where the stars were sparse and the void between systems stretched for weeks, only the desperate or the dangerous traveled. The Retribution was both. Built in the military yards orbiting Luna, she was pure human engineering. No elegant curves or artistic flourishes like the ships of older civilizations, just angles, armor, and enough firepower to crack a moon. Her crew of 200 were volunteers from Earth's military services. Men and women who had chosen the hardest posting in human space because someone had to watch the dark. Captain called Lieutenant Rivers from the communications station. "We're picking up a distress signal. Long range, very weak." Webb moved to the CUM station, his magnetic boots clicking on the metal deck. The bridge was cramped and functional, with no wasted space for comfort. Every surface was covered with screens, sensors, and weapon controls. It looked more like the inside of a tank than a starship. "Let me hear it," he ordered. The speaker crackled with static, and cleared enough to carry a voice speaking an accented galactic standard. "Altara 3 Research Station under attack by unknown hostiles. All defensive systems have failed. Massive. Casualties. Species unknown. Extremely hostile. Adapting to all countermeasures. Requesting immediate assistance." Webb frowned. Altara 3 was deep in Confederation space, where humans were barely tolerated as a probationary species. Most of the advanced alien civilizations still considered humanity too violent and primitive for full membership in galactic society. "Range and bearing?" he asked. 2 days hard burn, sir. The signal is degrading fast. Whatever's left of their transmitter won't last much longer." The bridge fell quiet except for the hum of the ship's fusion reactors. Webb's officers knew that look on their captain's face. He was making one of those decisions that would either get them all killed or make them legends. "Sir," said Commander Hart, the ship's executive officer, "Altara 3 is outside our patrol sector. It's in Confederation space. We have no authority there." "There's a human scientist on that station," Webb replied, checking the personnel. Files on his command screen. "Dr. Kira Thorne, xenobiology specialist. That makes it our business." Hart nodded slowly. The unofficial rule among human crews was simple. You don't abandon your own, no matter where they are or what regulations say otherwise. "What about the rest of our patrol?" asked Lieutenant Rivers. "We're supposed to check the mining stations?" "In the Kepler sector. The miners can wait." "Signal the Pack Hunter and Iron Storm. We're changing course." The Pack Hunter was a destroyer, fast and deadly, designed for hit-and-run attacks. The Iron Storm was an assault carrier, built to land troops on hostile worlds and keep them supplied while they fought. Together, the three ships formed a small but powerful battle group as the fleet changed course toward Altara 3. Webb studied the intelligence files on the target system. It was a peaceful research world, home to some of the galaxy's most advanced scientific minds. The kind of place where conflict was supposed to be impossible, where differences were settled through discussion and compromise. "Sir," called Ensign. "Park from the sensor station. I'm reading the distress signal's technical specifications. The attackers have knocked out quantum barriers, plasma shields, and graviton field generators. That's some serious firepower." Webb had fought in 3 border wars and countless skirmishes with pirates and raiders. He knew the look of a real battle, and this distress signal had all the signs. But what worried him was the part about the attackers adapting to countermeasures. That suggested intelligence and planning, not random violence. 2 days later, human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Altara 3 system. What they found made even the veteran crew members stop and stare. The space around the planet was filled with ships unlike anything in the databases. They moved like living things, organic curves shifting and flowing as they traveled. Some were small as fighters, others massive as battleships. They pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to serve as communication. "Jesus Christ," whispered Hart. "What are those things?" "Unknown contacts," reported Park. "I'm reading organic hulls, but with technology integrated throughout. They're not following standard physics. Some of them are accelerating without reaction drives." Webb studied the tactical display. The alien ships moved in perfect coordination like schools of fish or flocks of birds. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all focused on the planet below. The research station was still transmitting, but barely. "Captain," called Rivers, "I'm getting a weak signal from the surface. It's Dr. Thorne. She's alive, holed up in the lower levels with a few other survivors. How long before those things finish her off?" "Maybe 6 hours, sir. They're working through the station section." By section, Webb looked at his fleet. 3 ships against hundreds of unknowns. Any sane commander would call for reinforcements and wait for the Confederation fleet to arrive. But the Confederation was 6 days away, and the survivors would be dead in 6 hours. All ships. This is retribution. We're going in. Pack Hunter. Take the high orbit and start thinning out their scouts. Iron Storm. Prepare your Marines for surface assault. We're going to get our people out, Sir Hart said quietly. This could be considered an act of war against an unknown species. The Confederation won't thank us for starting a conflict. Webb turned to face his executive officer. The Confederation had their chance to respond. They chose to debate and deliberate while people died. We choose to fight. We said the retributions. Weapon systems came online with a series of mechanical sounds that were music to her crew's ears. Missile tubes loaded, energy weapons charged, and point defense systems activated. The ship's AI began calculating firing solutions for targets that moved like no ship should be able to move. Unknown vessels. This is Captain Marcus Webb of the Human Defense Fleet. Webb broadcasts on all frequencies. You are attacking a civilian research station. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The response was immediate. A dozen of the organic ships turned toward the human fleet, accelerating at impossible speeds. Their forms began to change. Growing what looked like weapon ports and shield generators. They're adapting, Park reported. I'm seeing structural modifications in real time. They're literally growing new weapons. Then we'll have to kill them before they finish, Webb replied calmly. All ships, weapons free. Show them what a Deathworld fleet can do. The Retribution opened fire with everything she had. Nuclear-tipped missiles streaked through space, followed by particle beams and railgun rounds moving at significant fractions of light speed. The Pack Hunter joined in, her lighter weapons adding to the storm of destruction. The organic ships tried to adapt, growing new armor and shields to counter the human weapons. But Webb had been fighting for 20 years, and he knew something the aliens didn't. The key to winning wasn't having better technology. It was being willing to use. Whatever worked, no matter how crude or brutal, target their coordination nodes, he ordered. Those light patterns they're using to communicate, blind them. The human ships concentrated their fire on the glowing sections of the alien vessels. Without their perfect coordination, the organic fleet began to falter. Some ships collided with others, some flew in circles, and some simply stopped moving altogether. In the confusion, Iron Storm launched her assault craft toward the planet's surface. Marine Lieutenant Dan Torres led 40% of humanity's finest soldiers down through the atmosphere. Their drop pods designed to punch through any defense and deliver trained killers exactly where they needed to be. The battle for Tara 3 had begun, and for the first time in galactic history, the civilized species were about to see what it meant to fight like humans. Lieutenant Don Torres felt the familiar kick of the drop pod's retro rockets as it punched through Altera 3's atmosphere. Around him, 39 other Marines were strapped into their harnesses. Weapons ready, faces grim behind their helmet visors. The pod's hull glowed cherry red from atmospheric friction, and the whole craft shook like it was coming apart. 60 seconds to impact, announced the pod's AI in its calm, mechanical voice. Hostile contacts detected. Recommend immediate dispersal upon landing. Through the small viewport, Torres could see the research station below. It looked like a metal flower that had been stepped on by a giant. The outer sections were completely destroyed, but the central hub was still intact. Smoke rose from dozens of fires, and the organic ships circled overhead like vultures. "Remember the mission?" Torres called out to his squad. "We get in, we find the survivors, we get out. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. These things have been killing aliens for hours. We don't know what they can do." The pod hit the ground with enough force to crack concrete. The Marines were out and moving before the dust settled, their powered armor servos whining as they spread out in a standard patrol formation. Torres took point, his assault rifle ready, sensors scanning for movement. The first thing he noticed was the smell. Even through his armor's filters, he could detect something like ozone mixed with rotting meat. The second thing was the silence. Research stations were supposed to be busy places, full of humming machinery and talking scientists. This one was dead quiet except for the wind. Contacts whispered Sergeant Mills from the squad's left flank. 200 meters, moving this way. Torres saw them through his scope. 3 of the organic creatures, each about the size of a small car, picking their way through the wreckage. They moved on to many legs, and their bodies seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. As he watched, one of them grew what looked like a sensor array from its back, scanning the area where the Marines had landed. They know we're here, Torres realized. Take them down, quiet as possible. The Marines opened fire with their rail rifles, weapons that used magnetic fields to fire metal slugs at hypersonic speeds. The first creature took 3 hits center mass and kept moving. The second took a direct hit to what might have been its head and split into 2 smaller versions of itself. They're adapting, called out Private Chen. My shots aren't penetrating anymore. Torres switched to armor-piercing rounds and put a burst into the third creature. This time it went down, but not before letting out a sound like a steam whistle. Within seconds, the ground around them was swarming with more of the things. Fighting withdrawal, Torres ordered. Move toward the station entrance. Use the terrain. The Marines fell back in good order, using the destroyed buildings and equipment as cover. But the creatures were learning fast. They began to anticipate the humans' movements, cutting off escape routes and forcing them into kill zones. Sir, called Corporal Davis from the rear guard. These things are smart. They're using pack tactics. Torres could see it too. Creatures weren't just attacking randomly. They were coordinating, with some acting as bait, while others flanked around behind. It was like fighting a pack of wolves. If wolves could grow new body parts and adapt to weapons in real time. Grenades, he ordered. High explosive. Let's see how they adapt to old-fashioned chemistry. Explosions tore through the attacking creatures, but even the ones that were blown apart seemed to keep moving. Pieces of organic matter crawled toward each other, trying to reform into larger entities. What the hell are these things? Muttered Mills. Torres didn't have an answer. In 20 years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. The creatures fought with the coordination of a hive mind, but they also showed individual initiative. They were like a hybrid of biological intelligence and mechanical precision. The Marines reached the station entrance and found it sealed by some kind of organic growth. The creatures had literally grown a barrier to keep anyone from getting in or out. Torres pulled out a plasma cutter and began burning through the obstruction. Hurry up, sir, called Davis. We've got company. More creatures were approaching from all directions. These were bigger than the first ones, with thicker armor and what looked like weapons growing from their bodies. Some had developed energy projectors, others had grown ballistic weapons that fired shards of bone or metal. They're copying our tactics, Torres realized. Using ranged weapons, coordinated fire. How is that possible? The plasma cutter burned through the barrier, and the Marines poured into the station's main corridor. The inside was worse than the outside. The walls were covered with some kind of organic webbing. The air was thick with spores that made their armor's filters work overtime. Life signs, reported Chen, checking his scanner. Lower levels, Section C. 5 contacts, all showing human or near-human readings. They moved through the station like they were clearing a hostile building, which in many ways they were. The creatures had turned the research facility into some kind of nest with passages. That led to organic chambers where they seemed to be processing the technology they had captured. In one room, Torres saw something that made his blood run cold. One of the creatures was interfacing directly with a computer terminal. Its organic tendrils merged with the machine's circuits. It was downloading data, learning everything the station's computers contained about galactic civilization. They're not just destroying, he told his squad. They're studying us. Learning about our technology, our societies, our weaknesses. The team reached the lower levels and found the sealed research vault where the survivors were hiding. Torres used his armor's external speakers to call out, Dr. Thorne, this is Lieutenant Torres, Human Defense Fleet Marines. We're here to get you out.
Oh.
The vault door opened, and 5 figures stumbled out. Dr. Thorne was a tall woman with short brown hair and the kind of steady ice that Torres had learned to respect in scientists. The others were various alien species, all looking like they had been through hell, Lieutenant Dr. Thorne said, her voice shaking with relief. Thank God. We thought no one was coming. We're not out of this yet, Torres replied. Can you move? Right. We need to get to the extraction point. Dr. Thorne nodded, but the alien scientist Dr. Nex looked like he was barely conscious. The others were in various states of shock and exhaustion. What are those things? Torres asked, as his Marines formed a protective circle around the survivors. We don't know, Dr. Thorne replied. But I've been studying their behavior. They're not just random attackers. They're systematic. They learn from every encounter, adapt to every defense. And they're not acting alone. What do you mean? Attack patterns, the coordination, the way they process information. This isn't just one species. It's like they're part of something larger, a collective intelligence that spans multiple systems. Torres felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's failing life support. You're saying this is just the beginning? I'm saying this is a scouting mission? They're gathering intelligence for something much bigger. The Marines began moving toward the extraction point, but the creatures had other plans. The corridors filled with organic growths that blocked their path, forcing them to take alternate routes. It was like the station itself was fighting against them. They're hurting us, Torres realized, driving us toward something. That something turned out to be a massive chamber where the creatures had built some kind of processing center. Dozens of the things were working with captured technology, learning how it functioned and adapting it to their own purposes. They're reverse engineering our entire civilization, Dr. Thorne whispered. Everything we've built, everything we've learned, they're making it their own. Torres looked at the scene and made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Set charges, he ordered. We're bringing this whole section down. Sir, that'll destroy irreplaceable research data, protested Chen. Better than letting them learn our secrets, Torres replied grimly. Do it. The Marines planted their demolition. Charges while the creatures seemed to ignore them, too focused on their data processing to notice the immediate threat. Torres had seen this kind of tunnel vision before in human scientists, but it was disturbing to see it in alien predators. They reached the extraction point just as the charges detonated. The explosion tore through the lower levels, collapsing tunnels and destroying the organic processing center. Through the smoke and debris, Torres could see the creatures scrambling to save their work. But it was too late. The dropship arrived on schedule, its pilot threading through the swarm of organic ships that tried to intercept it as they lifted off. Torres looked down at the burning research station and wondered if they had won a victory or just delayed the inevitable. Lieutenant Dr. Thorne said as they climbed toward orbit, "There's something else you need to know. Before the attack, we detected similar signals from 12 other systems.
Ow.
This isn't an isolated incident." Torres felt that chill again. 12 systems. 12 scouting missions. And somewhere out there, something was gathering intelligence about the entire galaxy, learning how to defeat every defense and counter every weapon. Above them, the human fleet was still fighting, proving that even the galaxy's primitive species could stand against the unknown. But Torres knew that this was just the first battle in a war that none of them understood yet. The dropship carrying. Lieutenant Torres and the survivors docked with the Iron Storm just as Captain Webb's fleet was finishing off the last of the organic ships in orbit. The creatures' perfect coordination had broken down completely once the humans started targeting their communication systems. Without their hive mind connection, they fought like confused animals instead of a unified force. Dr. Kira Thorne stepped onto the assault carrier's deck and found herself surrounded by humans in military uniforms. After days of hiding in a research station with peaceful alien scientists, the sight of armed soldiers was both frightening and reassuring. These people looked like they knew how to fight, and more importantly, they looked like they enjoyed it. "Dr. Thorne," Captain Webb said as he met them in the docking bay. "I'm glad we got to you in time. How many other survivors?" "4," she replied, helping support Dr. Nex as they walked toward the medical bay. "But Captain, there's something you need to know. This wasn't a random attack. Those creatures were gathering intelligence about our entire civilization." Webb's expression darkened. "What kind of intelligence?" "Everything. Technology, social structures, military capabilities, trade routes. They downloaded the entire research database before we could stop them. And according to our sensor readings, similar attacks happened in 12 other systems." They reached the ship's briefing room, where Webb's senior officers were waiting. The room was functional and cramped, with displays showing tactical information and star charts. It looked like a place where serious decisions were made by serious people. "Gentlemen," Webb said, "we have a problem." Dr. Thorne, please tell them what you told me. She explained what they had discovered about the creatures, their systematic approach to learning, and the coordinated nature of the attacks. As she spoke, she could see the expressions of the human officers changing from satisfaction at their victory to growing concern. 13 systems, said Commander Hart, studying the star chart. All of them research stations or scientific outposts, places with access to advanced technology and databases. They're mapping us, added Lieutenant Rivers. Learning our capabilities before launching a larger attack. Dr. Thorne nodded. That's exactly what I think. These weren't invasion forces. They were scouts, and we just proved that we can be defeated through conventional means. Conventional? Webb raised an eyebrow. We just destroyed an entire fleet of those things, because you caught them by surprise and used tactics they hadn't encountered before. But they learn, Captain. Everything we just did, every weapon we used, every tactic we employed, they'll adapt to it. Next time will be different. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans had won this battle, but they had also revealed their capabilities to an enemy that could adapt and learn from every encounter. Shh, said Torres, who had been quietly listening from the corner. There's something else. When we were in the station, I saw those things interfacing directly with the computers. They weren't just downloading data. They were processing it, analyzing it in real time. And they were doing it faster than any computer system I've ever seen. Dr. Nex, who had been receiving medical treatment, managed to speak up. The creatures showed capabilities that should be impossible according to known physics. Instantaneous adaptation, faster than light coordination, technology that responds to thought rather than programming. We are dealing with something far beyond our understanding. Webb stood up and walked to the main display, which showed the tactical situation across the sector. Dr. Thorne, in your professional opinion, how long do we have before they come back? On their behavior patterns, I'd say weeks, maybe a month at most. They'll need time to process all the information they gathered and plan their response. But when they return, they'll be ready for everything we threw at them today. Then we need to be ready for them, Webb said firmly. Rivers, send a full tactical report to Fleet Command. Tell them we need every available ship moved to defensive positions. Hart, I want our weapons techs working on new systems. If these things adapt to our current weapons, we need different ones, sir, interrupted Ensign Park from the sensor station. I'm detecting incoming ships. Confederation fleet, bearing 27 mark. For the display showed 6 sleek vessels approaching the system. They were elegant and curved, built for speed and efficiency rather than combat. Typical products of the advanced alien civilizations that valued art and science over warfare. This should be interesting, Webb muttered. Admiral Keth of the Trilaxian Defense Force was not happy. His tall, thin frame radiated disapproval as he materialized on the Iron Storm's bridge via holographic transmission. His species was known for their diplomatic skills and their absolute commitment to peaceful resolution of conflicts. Captain Webb, the Admiral said, in accented galactic standard, you have entered Confederation space without authorization and engaged in combat operations against an unknown species. This is a violation of 17 different treaties. With respect, Admiral, Webb replied calmly, we responded to a distress call from a civilian research station. Would you have preferred we let them die while waiting for proper authorization? The proper procedure would have been to notify Confederation forces and allow us to handle the situation through diplomatic channels. Dr. Thorne stepped forward. Admiral, with respect, there was no time for diplomacy. Those creatures killed most of the research staff within the first hour of their attack. They don't communicate. They don't negotiate. They just destroy and learn. Admiral Keth's expression showed the kind of patient superiority that came from belonging to a civilization that had solved conflicts through discussion for thousands of years. Dr. Thorne, every species can be reasoned with if approached correctly. Violence is simply the result of insufficient understanding. Tell that to Dr. Yex and the 30 other scientists who died before we could reach them, she replied sharply. The Admiral's confidence wavered slightly. You are certain that diplomatic contact was impossible, Admiral, said Captain Webb. I'll send you the tactical recordings. These things adapted to our weapons in real time, learned our tactics as we used them, and showed no interest in communication. They're not a civilization. They're a force of nature. And they're coming back. Over the next few hours, the Confederation fleet studied the battle recordings and examined the remains of the research station. Their attitude began to change. The elegant ships that had arrived expecting to conduct a peaceful investigation found themselves looking at evidence of a threat they had never imagined. The organic ships moved in ways that violate several laws of physics, reported the Confederation's chief scientist. Their technology appears to be based on principles we don't understand. And their ability to adapt suggests an intelligence that operates on multiple levels simultaneously. Admiral Keth watched the recordings of the human fleet in action. It's the brutal efficiency of their weapons, the aggressive tactics that turned, the enemy's coordination against them, the willingness to sacrifice elegant solutions for effective ones. It was everything his civilization had moved beyond, and it had saved lives that his people's methods could never have rescued. Captain Webb, he said finally, I believe we need to discuss a change in our relationship with humanity. Webb smiled. Grimly, Admiral, I think the galaxy is about to get a very unpleasant education in why some species stay violent. When those things come back, they're going to find out that humans don't just fight to win. We fight to make sure our enemies never threaten anyone again. The word was already spreading through subspace communications. Ooh, the primitive humans from the Outer Rim had done something the advanced civilizations couldn't do. No. They had faced an extinction-level threat and not just survived, but won. And more importantly, it had proven that sometimes the civilized approach wasn't enough. The galaxy's age of peaceful coexistence was ending. The age of human-led defense was about to begin. 3 months after the battle at Altara 3, Captain Marcus Webb stood in the chambers of the Galactic Confederation, Council on the capital world of Centaura Prime. The building was a masterpiece of architecture, with soaring crystal spires and floating walkways that demonstrated the artistic achievements of a dozen different species. It was beautiful, peaceful, completely unprepared for war. The council members sat in a great circle, each representing one of the major civilizations of the galaxy. They were scholars, diplomats, and philosophers who had spent centuries perfecting the art of peaceful coexistence. Now they were asking a human soldier to teach them how to fight. Captain Webb, said Counselor Thex, the elderly Alterian who served as the council speaker. We have studied your reports on the Altara 3 incident. We have also confirmed similar attacks in 17 additional systems since that time. It appears that our initial assessment was incorrect. Webb remained standing, his dress uniform, crisp and formal. Behind him, Dr. Kira Thorne sat with other human advisors, including Lieutenant Torres, who had been promoted to major after his successful rescue mission. The sight of armed humans in the council chambers would have been unthinkable. Just months ago, the creatures you call the Void Swarm represent a threat we have never encountered, continued Counselor Thex. Our traditional methods of conflict resolution have proven inadequate. We require new approaches to defense. With respect, Counselor Webb replied, what you need is not new approaches. You need old ones. The galaxy has been peaceful for so long that you've forgotten how to recognize predators. Counselor Yith, representing the Voltan Unity, spoke up. Captain, surely you understand that violence is not the answer to every problem. Our civilizations have achieved great things through cooperation and understanding. That's exactly why you're helpless against the swarm, Webb said bluntly. You've trained yourselves to see every conflict as a misunderstanding that can be resolved through discussion. But some enemies don't want to talk. They want to consume everything you've built. Dr. Thorne activated a holographic display that showed the current tactical situation. Red markers indicated confirmed swarm activity in over 30 systems, with the attacks growing more sophisticated each time. Pattern is clear, she explained. Each attack has been more effective than the last. They're learning from our defenses and adapting their tactics. The latest assault on the Kepler research station resulted in complete data extraction within 6 hours. They're getting better at this. Counselor Mex of the Trilaxian Federation raised one of his 4 arms. Dr. Thorne, what is your assessment of our current defensive capabilities? Honestly, inadequate? Your fleets are designed for exploration and trade protection, not warfare. Your weapons are intended to disable rather than destroy. Your tactics assume that opponents will follow. Conventional rules of engagement against the swarm, all of that is useless. The chamber fell silent. For civilizations that prided themselves on their advanced technology and sophisticated thinking, it was humbling to be told that their greatest achievements were worthless. "What do you recommend?" asked Counselor Vex. Webb stepped forward. "Integration. Your technology combined with human tactics and training. We know how to fight. You know how to build better weapons and defenses. Together, we might have a chance." "You're suggesting a military alliance?" Counselor Yith looked uncomfortable. "With the concept, I'm suggesting survival," Webb replied. "The swarm isn't interested in negotiation or compromise. They want to strip the galaxy of all intelligent life and use our technology to expand into other galaxies. This is extinction we're talking about, not politics." Major Torres stood up. "Counselors, I've fought these things up close. I've seen what they do to worlds. They attack. They don't just kill the population, they absorb everything. Technology, culture, knowledge, even the planet's ecosystem. When they're done, there's nothing left but empty space." The council members exchanged glances. They were used to dealing with problems that could be solved through careful thought and patient discussion. The idea of an enemy that simply wanted to destroy everything was alien to their way of thinking. "What would this alliance require?" asked Counselor Vex. "Full integration of human military personnel into Confederation fleets," Webb answered. "Human-designed weapons and tactics training for all defensive forces, and most importantly, a change in thinking. You need to stop seeing the swarm as a species you can reason with and start seeing them as a disease that needs to be cured." Dr. Thorne activated another display showing proposed fleet compositions. "We've run simulations based on combined human and Confederation technology. The results are promising. Human tactical flexibility combined with alien defensive capabilities could create fleets that are both more powerful and more adaptable than anything either of us could build alone." "There is another consideration," added Counselor Mex. "Our populations are not accustomed to the concept of total war. The psychological impact of adopting human military methods may be significant. The psychological impact of extinction will be worse," Webb replied grimly. "Counselor, with respect, your people are going to have to choose between changing their comfortable assumptions and watching their children die." The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy of new swarm attacks, each one more devastating than the last. The peaceful civilizations that had dominated galactic politics for millennia were being systematically destroyed by an enemy they couldn't understand or fight effectively. In the end, the vote was unanimous. The Galactic Defense Integration Act passed with full support from all member species. For the first time in galactic history, humans were granted full membership in the Confederation and given authority over military operations, Captain. Webb found himself promoted to Admiral and placed in command of the newly formed Combined Defense Fleet. The irony wasn't lost on him. 3 months ago, humans had been considered too primitive for full membership. Now they were being asked to lead the galaxy's defense against extinction. The first combined fleet was assembled at the Titan shipyards, where human engineers worked alongside alien scientists to create something new. The ships that emerged were unlike anything previously seen. They had the elegant lines of Confederation vessels, but the brutal firepower of human warships. They could move with the grace of art and strike with the force of natural disasters. Lieutenant Rivers, now promoted to captain, commanded the first of these hybrid vessels. The ship was called the Unity, and it represented everything the new Alliance stood for. Its crew was mixed human and alien, its weapons combined the best of both technologies, and its mission was simple: find the swarm and destroy it. Dr. Thorne had been appointed as the fleet's chief science officer, leading teams that were working to understand the enemy they faced. Her research had revealed disturbing facts about the swarm's true nature. They weren't just another species expanding their territory. They were something far worse. The swarm is a galactic cleansing mechanism, she explained to the assembled fleet commanders. They appear every few million years when intelligent life reaches a certain level of development. They consume everything, process it, and then move on to the next galaxy. We're not fighting an invasion, we're fighting the immune system of the universe itself. And how do we win? Asked Captain Rivers. By being something they've never encountered before, Admiral Webb replied. Every previous civilization they've faced has been like the Confederation. It's advanced, peaceful, predictable, but they've never faced a species that fights back with pure, stubborn hatred. The Combined Defense Fleet's first major engagement came 2 weeks later when the swarm attacked the industrial world of Forge Prime. This time, instead of arriving to find devastation, the human-led fleet was waiting for them. The battle was unlike anything in galactic history. The swarm came expecting to face the same ineffective resistance they had encountered before. Instead, they found ships that fought with a savagery that shocked even the veterans of both species. Admiral Webb had learned from the Altara the third encounter. Instead of targeting the swarm's coordination systems, he went after their ability to learn as ships carried weapons that changed their operating principles randomly, making adaptation impossible. He used tactics that were deliberately chaotic. It's preventing the enemy from establishing patterns to counter. Most importantly, they fought with the kind of brutal efficiency that only came from a species that had spent its entire evolutionary history as both predator and prey. The humans didn't just want to win the battle, they wanted to send a message that would echo across the galaxy. The message was simple. The galaxy now had defenders who didn't just fight to protect what they loved, but who enjoyed destroying what they hated. When the last swarm ship was destroyed, Admiral Webb opened communications to the entire galaxy. His words were broadcast to every inhabited world, every space station, every ship in the void. This is Admiral Marcus Webb of the Combined Defense Fleet. The swarm has been defeated at Forge Prime, but this is just the beginning. They will come again, in greater numbers, and with better preparation. When they do, they will find us ready. The galaxy's age of peaceful expansion is over. We are now at war for the right to exist. And we will win that war because we have something the swarm doesn't understand, the willingness to fight. Not just for survival, but for the right to choose our own destiny. The response was immediate. Across the galaxy, species that had never considered military service began, volunteering for the Combined Defense Fleet. The humans had shown them something they had forgotten, that sometimes the only way to preserve peace was to be better at war than your enemies. In the depths of space, far from any star system, something vast and ancient stirred. The swarm had sent its scouts and found resistance. Now it was time for the real war to begin. But for the first time in millions of years, the galaxy wouldn't be facing extinction alone. The Deathworld fleet was ready, and the hunters had become the hunted.